What if during the reign of Julius Caesar dinosaurs lived and helped him build his empire? Chapter 1, Shadows from the Past. Rome, 70 BCE, the city of eternal hills, like a pulsating heart of a young and vibrant empire, rose majestically above the winding Tiber, its waters glistening with the morning mist where the air was thick with the rich scent of ripe olives, freshly cut stone, and the faint tang of smoke from distant forges. But this Rome stood apart from the historical image preserved in dusty textbooks, a city transformed by an extraordinary presence. Above the rooftops of grand temples, crowned with gleaming marble statues of gods like Jupiter and Mars, and the bustling forum, where the resonant voices of orators blended seamlessly with the rustle of senators' flowing togas, the clink of coins, and the chatter of merchants, soared dark, massive shadows. These elongated silhouettes, casting long, intricate patterns across the mosaic pavements worn smooth by countless sandals, belonged to creatures whose existence seemed to have ended millions of years ago. Dinosaurs. They were not mere fossils or mythical figures from ancient legends. They lived here, breathing heavily, roaring with primal force, sometimes inspiring awe and reverence, while becoming an inseparable, dynamic part of everyday reality. Julius Caesar, then a young and fiercely ambitious praetor with a sharp, piercing gaze, a resolute posture, and an air of unshakable confidence, first encountered this astonishing reality during his proconsulship in the rugged landscapes of Spain, in the wild, rocky mountains, where the wind carried the crisp scent of pine needles, the salty tang of the nearby sea, and the occasional whiff of wild herbs. He led his disciplined legions against fierce local tribes with painted faces and fierce war cries. There, among steep cliffs shrouded in morning fog and narrow gorges echoing with the rush of hidden streams, he beheld the mountain lizards, enormous, scaly creatures with powerful, whip-like tails, horned protrusions glinting in the sunlight, and bodies clad in natural armor of thick, overlapping plates that shimmered like polished bronze. These beasts, towering over the battlefield, carried Spanish warriors on their broad, muscular backs, the warriors armed with long spears tipped with obsidian and round shields painted with tribal symbols, making them an unrivaled, terrifying force against Roman steel. The defeats suffered by the legions were often attributed to these creatures, whose raw strength, startling speed, and unyielding endurance threw the disciplined Roman ranks into disarray, scattering shields and breaking formations. Caesar, with his keen analytical mind and insatiable curiosity, did not see them merely as fearsome enemies to be vanquished. He recognized the untapped potential of allies capable of altering the very course of history with their might. He began a meticulous study of their habits, how they responded to the rhythmic sounds of drums, how they communicated with low, resonant calls among themselves, how they reacted with curiosity or regression to human presence. Legends, passed down through generations by grizzled elders around flickering campfires, whispered that ancient Romans possessed secret, arcane knowledge of taming these colossal giants, and Caesar, with his unquenchable thirst for power, prestige, and innovation, became obsessed with reviving these lost, mystical skills. He saw in dinosaurs not just weapons of war, but a profound symbol of a new, invincible empire where man and nature would merge into a single, harmonious entity, a vision that fueled his every ambition. Chapter 2, Whisper of Taming. Year after year, Julius Caesar, with his relentless energy, sharp intellect, and unyielding insight, immersed himself deeply in the fascinating world of ancient texts, dusty scrolls, and hands-on observations of dinosaurs, striving not merely to subdue these majestic creatures through brute force but to establish a profound symbiosis based on mutual understanding, trust, and respect. His personal office in the heart of Rome, a sanctuary filled with towering shelves groaning under the weight of parchment rolls, flickering candlelight casting trembling, dancing shadows across the walls, and the faint scent of wax and ink permeating the air, became the epicenter of this all-consuming obsession that drove his every waking moment. He dispatched trusted emissaries across the Mediterranean to Alexandria, a city renowned for its vast libraries, where with great effort and careful negotiation they retrieved old, fragile scrolls covered in centuries of dust and spiderwebs, which whispered tantalizing secrets of the Song of Dragons, a unique, hypnotic vibration created by deep, low sounds capable of calming the wildest dinosaur species or, conversely, agitating them into a frenzy when used with intent. These ancient texts, adorned with intricate hieroglyphs, faded ink sketches, and schematic drawings of reptiles with detailed annotations, also mentioned the elusive heartstone, a rare, luminescent mineral that, according to legend, could establish a mysterious mental connection with these reptiles if held during a sacred ritual under the moonlit sky. Caesar gathered around him a diverse team of scholars with furrowed brows, naturalists clutching detailed sketches of animals with quills in hand, and even seasoned circus tamers known for their daring tricks with wild beasts captured from distant lands, all working together in a shared pursuit of knowledge. However, true enlightenment and a turning point came when he ventured boldly into the wild himself, spending weeks in the dense, whispering forests and on wind-swept hills teeming with life, observing with keen eyes the flocks of Gallic skimmers, agile, predatory flying reptiles with wingspans stretching up to 10 meters, their feathered wings shimmering with iridescent hues in the golden sunset rays, their movements a ballet of grace and power. He noted with fascination their complex social behavior, how they exchanged melodic calls that reverberated through the trees, how they reacted with precision to the slightest shifts in wind movements, how they fiercely protected their young with coordinated dives and cries. The first breakthrough, a moment that would echo through history, occurred with a young male guard theropod, Carnodicus custos, a large but surprisingly calm predator with massive, padded paws, scales resembling intricately crafted armor, and a demeanor that hinted at untapped potential. Used locally by shepherds as a vigilant watchdog against wolves, Caesar, discarding his weapons and surrounding himself with only a small retinue of silent observers armed with scrolls and quills, approached it slowly, with reverence and patience, emitting low, guttural sounds that mimicked the calls he had painstakingly learned from other creatures during his studies. After several weeks of tense anticipation, near misses, and unwavering patience under the open sky, the theropod allowed Caesar to gently touch its rough, scaly hide, covered in small cracks filled with dust and the scars of a wild life. This was not just a minor success in taming, it became a miraculous event that spread like wildfire, even to the farthest, dusty corners of Rome, carried by merchants and soldiers alike. Rumors of the Caesar the Enchanter, a title whispered with both awe and trepidation, traveled with the speed of the wind, eliciting profound admiration from the common folk and growing unease among the elite. The Senate, convened in an emergency session within the Grand Curia with its towering columns, was deeply alarmed, seeing this unprecedented development as something far beyond the bounds of tradition, and heated debates about the nature, morality, and implications of these beastly methods flared with renewed vigor, echoing off the marble walls. Chapter 3, Gallic Barbarians and Winged Terrors. Taming dinosaurs became the cornerstone and defining feature of Julius Caesar's audacious military campaigns in Gaul, transforming his legions into an unmatched, awe-inspiring force that rewrote the rules of warfare. Barbarian tribes, rugged warriors accustomed to fierce battles with ordinary men wielding swords, mounted on swift horses, and fortified with crude wooden palisades, were utterly horrified when winged hunters, Aradracopredator, gigantic pterodactyls with wingspans stretching up to 15 meters, their leathery membranes glinting with a metallic sheen in the harsh sunlight, swooped down with terrifying precision over their fortified hilltop settlements, surrounded by crudely hewn log palisades reinforced with mud and vines. These majestic creatures, ridden by fearless legionaries clad in gleaming armor adorned with Roman eagles, dropped incendiary projectiles, tar-filled spheres wrapped in cloth, leaving thick, smoky trails that spiraled into the air, sowing widespread panic, igniting roaring fires, and reducing wooden defenses to smoldering ruins in mere moments. The ground trembled violently under the thunderous hooves of heavy beasts, Belias pondus, massive ankylosaurs whose broad backs, covered with armored plates shimmering like polished steel in the sun, served as perfect, mobile siege towers capable of withstanding a relentless hail of arrows, spears, and stones launched by the desperate barbarians. The crossbows and javelins of the Gallic warriors, tipped with flint and hurled with all their might, bounced harmlessly off their hides like pebbles off a fortress wall, leaving only superficial scratches on their impenetrable scales that glistened with sweat and dust. Caesar personally participated in the initial assaults, standing tall on a grassy rise with a fluttering crimson cloak billowing in the wind, inspiring his warriors with loud, resonant speeches that carried over the battlefield, and demonstrating with unwavering confidence that these creatures brought swift death to enemies, never to the disciplined Romans under his command. He devised innovative, meticulously planned battle formations, integrating dinosaurs into the legionary structure with mathematical precision and tactical brilliance, ensuring every movement was synchronized. Light infantry, agile and quick on their feet, learned to coordinate seamlessly with forest thunders, Silvosaurus fulmen, swift, pack-hunting velociraptors with sharp, curved claws, feather-like quills resembling deadly arrows, and eyes that gleamed with predatory intent. capable of penetrating deep into enemy lines, setting cunning ambushes among the dense, shadowy trees, and pursuing the retreating foe with movements akin to a deadly, choreographed dance. The Battle of Alicia, initially slated to be a prolonged, grueling siege with towering wooden siege towers and heavy battering rams creaking under their own weight, transformed into a lightning-fast, overwhelming blitzkrieg that caught the enemy off guard. A formidable group of heavy beasts roared with primal fury as they breached the stout walls with their sheer mass, leaving behind piles of splintered rubble and shattered timbers, opening a wide path for legionaries armed with gleaming shields and sharp swords to pour through with shouts of victory. Meanwhile, winged hunters, diving from the smoky sky with wings cutting through the air, annihilated the Gallic reserves attempting to break through from outside, their piercing cries blending with the crackle of burning fortifications and the clash of steel. The barbarians, though brave with long, braided hair and bodies covered in scars from countless battles, could not withstand such a devastating combination of raw power and sophisticated tactics. Watching from a hilltop vantage point, Caesar made them believe that the very sky and earth, embodied in his awe-inspiring dinosaurs, had turned against them with unrelenting force, solidifying his towering reputation as an invincible, almost mythical commander whose name would be etched in history. Chapter 4, Crossing the Rubicon and Shadows of the Senate. After his brilliant and triumphant Gallic campaigns, Caesar's power and influence reached an unprecedented, almost godlike peak, radiating across the Roman world. He returned to Italy not only with immense wealth, gleaming gold ingots, intricately crafted silver vessels, and precious fabrics dyed in vibrant hues, but also with a formidable army of tame dinosaurs, meticulously trained and disciplined as never before, their heavy footsteps resounding like a drumbeat on the ancient Roman roads paved with worn stones. The Senate, led by the imposing figure of Pompey, whose stern presence loomed over the rostrum like a statue carved from marble, saw this extraordinary development not only as a direct threat to their waning authority but also as a profound challenge to the millennia-old traditions that had defined Roman identity and governance. "This is un-Roman." The thunderous speeches of senators, their voices echoing off the marble halls with indignant fervor, condemning Caesar's unconventional beastly war methods, reverberated through the Curia as he brought with him mountain lizards with their massive, earth-shaking bodies and storm messengers, enormous pteranodons with leathery wings that stretched wide, casting ominous shadows across the land. When Caesar approached the Rubicon, a modest yet symbolically charged stream reflecting the summer gray sky streaked with clouds, separating the province from Italy and representing the unbreachable boundary that could not be crossed with an armed force without declaring war, his dragon legion awaited in disciplined battle formation, their breaths visible in the cool air. Leading the vanguard was a formidable phalanx of mountain lizards, their curved horns glinting with a metallic sheen in the setting sun's fading rays, followed by orderly ranks of sentries with polished shields and sharpened spears held high, while overhead soared storm messengers, their vast shadows gliding silently over the faces of frightened peasants hiding behind gnarled bushes and trembling trees. The night before the fateful crossing, Caesar, wrapped in a heavy cloak that rustled with each movement, stood by a crackling campfire sending sparks into the darkness, gazing with a contemplative expression at the sleeping or vigilant dinosaurs, their massive, shadowy silhouettes outlined against the dancing flames, their quiet breathing a stark contrast to the tension in the air. He understood with a heavy heart that this bold step meant the inevitable onset of a brutal civil war, a conflict that would tear Rome apart, but he believed with unwavering conviction that only thus could he save the Republic from the corruption, decadence, and weakness that plagued its institutions, ushering in a new era of unmatched strength and unity. The morning greeted him with the piercing cries of eagles mingling with the deep, guttural roars of dinosaurs, their combined sounds carrying ominously over the rippling river. "The die is cast," Caesar declared with a resolute, commanding voice that cut through the dawn mist, and his extraordinary army, where man and beast formed a single, indomitable entity bound by loyalty and purpose, stepped across the Rubicon, leaving gentle ripples on the water's surface and sowing fear and uncertainty in the hearts of his formidable opponents awaiting on the other side. Chapter 5, Civil War and the Battle of Pharsalus. Civil war engulfed the Roman Republic like a wildfire consuming a dry, wind-swept steppe, its flames spreading with relentless fury across the landscape. Pompey, having assembled a significant and well-organized force, infantry with long, gleaming spears and cavalry with fluttering banners emblazoned with bold symbols though without the tactical beasts he disdainfully referred to with a sneer, opposed Caesar on the vast, sun-scorched plains of Greece. The Battle of Pharsalus became the climactic, defining moment of this confrontation, where the fate of Rome hung in the balance under a relentless, scorching sun that baked the earth and tested the endurance of all involved. Pompey's army, numerous, well-trained, and disciplined, formed a classic Roman line with dense, interlocking ranks of shields polished to a mirror-like finish and gleaming swords held at the ready, prepared for a traditional, head-on clash rooted in centuries of military doctrine. But Caesar, with his unparalleled strategic genius, a mind that saw opportunities where others saw obstacles, prepared a surprise that would alter the course of history with devastating impact and lasting resonance. At the unyielding center of his innovative formation stood the iron shields, Beltaries Ferii, massive, imposing stegosaurs whose meter-long, razor-sharp tail spikes could thin out even the densest infantry ranks with a single swing, their broad backs gleaming with thick, overlapping plates that provided perfect, impregnable cover for archers shooting with deadly accuracy from behind their towering forms. On the agile flanks were concealed storm riders, tempestrii equites, armored horsemen mounted on swift, muscular carnotauruses with powerful, sinewy legs and curved horns that glinted menacingly, capable of lightning-fast breakthroughs that shattered enemy cavalry with ease, their deep roars echoing across the dusty battlefield like a war drum. When the armies clashed with a thunderous roar, the strike of the iron shields was utterly devastating. Their spikes pierced through Pompey's shields with a sickening crunch, tearing through lines of soldiers, followed by legionaries advancing under their protective cover with triumphant shouts, the flash of swords reflecting the sun's harsh light. But true, unrestrained chaos erupted when the storm riders, biding their moment with disciplined patience, attacked Pompey's vulnerable flanks with ferocious speed, their carnotauruses easily crushing horses and scattering riders, striking the unprotected rear of his legions with unrelenting force. Overhead, butchers of the sky, Carnifex Chilum, terrifying pterosaur predators with clawed feet that gripped like iron and sharp beaks that sliced through the air, specially trained to target and behead enemy commanders and destroy standard-bearers with surgical precision, dived in with a deafening screech, sowing panic, disorganization, and despair among the troops below. Pompey, seeing the inevitable tide of defeat with a pale, sweat-streaked face and trembling hands clutching his reins, fled the battlefield in disgrace, abandoning his soldiers to the mercy of the victors who pursued with ruthless efficiency. Caesar, calm and unshakable as a mountain, stood tall on a rise with a fluttering cloak snapping in the wind, watching the victory unfold with a steely gaze, a triumph made possible by the unprecedented, harmonious fusion of human tactics and the raw, natural might of dinosaurs, cementing his status as a legendary commander whose name would echo through the annals of time. Chapter 6, Egyptian Mysteries and Treasures of the Nile. The resounding victory at Pharsalus opened a golden path for Julius Caesar to Egypt, where he encountered not only the enigmatic Cleopatra but also ancient, breathtaking secrets that surpassed even the wildest stretches of imagination, unveiling a world of wonder beneath the desert sands. This storied land, famed for its towering pyramids rising like silent sentinels above the endless dunes, proved to be the cradle not only of architectural marvels crafted with precision but also of the earliest and most refined, sophisticated methods of taming dinosaurs, their roots stretching back through millennia of forgotten history. Along the tranquil banks of the Nile, where the water mirrored the golden sunset rays dancing on its surface, in hidden, sacred temples with intricately carved walls adorned with faded frescoes, priests clad in flowing white tunics preserved a wealth of knowledge about the water dragons, Dracofluvius, enormous spinosaurs with elongated, toothy jaws, powerful legs that propelled them through the currents, and scaly hides that glistened like emeralds, capable of navigating the river's depths as both reliable transport for goods piled high on their backs and formidable combat units guarding the fertile shores from invaders. Cleopatra, an enlightened and far-sighted ruler with a regal bearing, a voice that commanded attention, and eyes that sparkled with intelligence, had spent her formative childhood years alongside young spinosaurs, studying their habits with a childlike curiosity, how they dove gracefully for fish with a splash, how they responded to gentle commands with a tilt of their heads, how they basked in the sun with contented grunts. In the shadowy, underwater grottos of the Nile, illuminated by the faint, flickering glow of oil torches mounted on rocky outcrops, Caesar witnessed something truly astonishing: gigantic plesiosaurs, guardians of the depths, custodes profundi, with long, sinuous necks that swayed like reeds, broad fins that propelled them silently, and hides that shimmered with a pearlescent sheen, tamed and trained with remarkable skill to protect underwater treasures, gold coins glinting in the murky depths, precious gems scattered among the ruins and thwarts the invasions with a coordinated defense. In exchange for Caesar's crucial support in her fierce struggle for the throne against her ambitious brother Ptolemy XIII, Cleopatra offered not only vast reserves of gold that filled coffers to overflowing and grain that could feed legions for months, but also several highly trained water dragons, their scaly backs glistening with river water in the sunlight, and granted exclusive access to secret, ancient scrolls adorned with hieroglyphs, detailed training diagrams, and cryptic annotations, revealing sophisticated techniques for breeding, educating, and maintaining these ancient, majestic creatures. Caesar, with his analytical mind that dissected every detail, realized with a surge of excitement that Egypt held the golden key to a new, elevated level of control over these dinosaurs, envisioning a naval fleet invincible on water as a golden opportunity to strengthen his dominion over the entire Mediterranean, a dream that fueled his strategic ambitions. Chapter 7, Caesar's Triumph and the Beastly Parade. Upon his triumphant return to Rome, Julius Caesar organized a magnificent series of triumphs, each celebration outshining the previous one in grandeur, splendor, and breathtaking spectacle, held under a clear, azure sky with a gentle, refreshing breeze rustling the colorful banners that fluttered like living things. The most unforgettable and awe-inspiring was the triumph following his decisive victory over Pompey and the successful stabilization of the eastern provinces, turning the bustling streets into a vibrant sea of fragrant flowers scattered by adoring crowds and filled with the thunderous roar of jubilant voices rising in unison. This was not merely a traditional parade but a grand, theatrical demonstration of power unseen in the annals of Rome, transforming the entire city into an expansive, open-air stage of epic proportions that captivated every onlooker. Leading the procession were rows of prisoners with bowed heads, their hands bound with heavy chains that clinked with each step, and captured spoils gleaming golden statues cast in heroic poses, intricately designed chests overflowing with precious jewels that sparkled in the sunlight. But behind them came something utterly unprecedented, a sight that left the city breathless. First marched the legions of Tyrannosaurs, Legio Tyrannus, not literal Tyrannosaurs, deemed too dangerous even for Caesar's bold vision, but specially bred and meticulously trained giant theropods with massive, toothy jaws and scales meticulously crafted to mimic their fearsome, legendary appearance with a lifelike sheen. Some of these majestic beasts carried elaborately decorated wagons adorned with gold leaf and flowing fabrics dyed in royal purple on their broad backs, while others strode freely with powerful strides, their deep roars like rolling thunder shaking the air with a palpable vibration, forcing people in the dense crowd to step back in a mix of awe and instinctual fear, some covering their ears with trembling hands. Following them were the graceful hippogriffons, Hippogriffus romanus, exquisite hybrids of pterodactyls and terrestrial predators with long, elegant wings that stretched wide and clawed feet that gripped the air, ridden by daring acrobat riders clad in shimmering tunics, performing breathtaking aerial stunts, leaping with acrobatic precision from wingtips to the ground and back with a flourish. Next came the shield-bearers, Armiger, majestic triceratopses whose sturdy horns were decorated with golden Roman eagles crafted with fine detail, their broad backs fitted with ballistae that, to everyone's wide-eyed amazement, fired demonstration shots at wooden targets set up along the route, leaving smoky, spiraling trails that lingered in the air like battle scars. Finally, Caesar himself, clad in a resplendent purple cloak that billowed dramatically, rode a magnificently adorned brachiosaur he named Colossus of Rome, Colossus Romi, with golden reins glinting in the sunlight and flowing fabrics cascading from its towering back like a royal train. This was the largest tamed beast ever seen, a towering symbol of his unparalleled power and extraordinary ability to subdue even the wildest forces of nature, its heavy footsteps resounding like the steady beat of triumph drums that pulsed through the city. Romans, accustomed to the thrilling spectacles of the Colosseum with its roaring crowds, were utterly astounded, their emotions surging from heartfelt admiration as children waved their small hands with glee, to a sacred, almost reverent terror as elders crossed themselves with trembling fingers, turning the celebration into an epic, unforgettable spectacle that would be retold for generations. Caesar not only conquered the vast world with his strategic brilliance but also its ancient, awe-inspiring inhabitants, cementing his legend as a ruler whose influence transcended time. Chapter 8, Conspiracies and Omens of Doom. Caesar's power seemed unshakable, as solid and enduring as a rock withstanding the fiercest storm lashing the coast with waves. He was dictator with absolute authority, lifelong pontiff with spiritual dominion, and his dragon legions mighty theropods with their thunderous presence, graceful pterodactyls soaring overhead, and triceratopses with their unyielding strength ensured his invincibility, their roars and heavy footsteps echoing through the winding streets and grand plazas of Rome like a living anthem. But this unprecedented, awe-inspiring might, deeply rooted in the integration of dinosaurs into his rule, unexpectedly became the very source of his tragic downfall, a paradox that would haunt his legacy. Senators, traditionalists draped in long, flowing togas with stern, unyielding faces etched with age, Republicans clinging desperately to fading ideals of a bygone era, and those trembling with fear at his ever-growing, almost divine aura radiating from his every decree, saw in him a formidable threat not only to the fragile republican order they held dear but also to the very natural order of things, where man was ordained to remain the undisputed pinnacle of creation in the eyes of the gods. He has tamed the fiercest beasts, he has tamed the unpredictable elements. Will he dare to tame the gods themselves in his boundless ambition? Such hushed, conspiratorial whispers, carried by the restless wind rustling through the olive trees, circulated through Rome's narrow, shadowed streets lined with ancient stones, especially among the solemn priests venerating Jupiter with his thunderbolts and Mars with his spear. Some of these holy men, adorned with ritual staffs carved with sacred symbols and golden amulets that glinted faintly in the torchlight, deemed the taming of these colossal dinosaurs a grave blasphemy, a flagrant violation of the sacred order established by the divine, predicting with somber voices a heavenly wrath manifested in ominous thunder rolling across the sky and jagged lightning striking over the hallowed capital. Secret, clandestine nighttime meetings of conspirators, hidden in the deep, cool shadows of the Temple of Vesta where the sacred fire flickered, grew more frequent and intense, their faces illuminated only by the faint, wavering glow of oil lamps casting long, distorted shadows on the stone walls. Brutus, with his contemplative gaze softened by inner conflict, Cassius, with cold, unyielding resolve etched into his features, and dozens of other senators with furrowed brows, deeply troubled by Caesar's authoritarian rule that silenced dissent and his monstrous armies that defied tradition, plotted his assassination with meticulous care. They knew with grim certainty that in open battle, where dinosaurs could crush their forces with a single charge, Caesar was an unbeatable titan. The only viable way to halt his relentless rise was to strike at the very heart of Rome, where he felt most secure in the hallowed Senate chamber, amid towering marble statues gazing down and golden eagles perched on standards, a place of supposed sanctuary. The conspirators were convinced with misguided faith that after his death, the dinosaurs, bereft of their enchanter who had guided them with an iron will, would fall into a frenzied panic or scatter aimlessly into the wild, returning to their primal roots. This was a critical misconception they failed to grasp with fatal consequences. Caesar had not merely tamed these creatures with force, he had woven them intricately into the fabric of daily life, military doctrine with its rigid hierarchies, and the thriving economy with its bustling markets, where their presence had become the new norm, an order so deeply embedded that it proved impossible to dismantle with a single, treacherous dagger strike. Chapter 9, The Ides of March and the Beast's Reaction. March 15, 44 BCE, the ominous Ides of March, dawned with a heavy, foreboding portent that hung over the city like a dark cloud, casting a pall over the golden light of morning. Despite numerous chilling ill omens that whispered of impending doom, cawing ravens circling ominously over his grand house with their harsh cries, ominous cracks snaking through the sacred statues of gods standing guard in the forum, and dark, troubling dreams that plagued his restless sleep, Caesar proceeded to the Senate with a firm, unyielding stride, his head held high, accompanied by a small, trusted entourage of advisors and guards. His personal guard, including the vigilant flying guardians, custos volans, specially trained pterodactyls with leathery wings that stretched wide, sharp beaks capable of emitting piercing, warning cries at the slightest hint of danger, and keen eyes that scanned the horizon, remained stationed outside as required by strict, ancient custom, their vast shadows flickering like phantoms over the ornate portico with its carved columns. His usual ground-based guard dinosaurs, massive, imposing theropods with scaly armor that gleamed like burnished steel under the sun, also stayed at the entrance, their deep, resonant roars muffled by the thick, insulating walls of the Senate building. Inside the hallowed Senate chamber, at the imposing base of Pompey's statue surrounded by gleaming marble slabs polished to a mirror-like finish, the conspirators, Brutus with his conflicted heart, Cassius with his steely determination, and others with daggers concealed within the folds of their flowing togas, pounced on him with ruthless coordination. 23 dagger strikes, each accompanied by a hoarse, anguished gasp that tore through the silence, ended the life of Rome's greatest son in a brutal, crimson cascade. his blood pooling in dark, spreading stains on the cold marble floor, a stark contrast to the grandeur of the room. But their calculated belief that the dinosaurs would scatter in confusion and abandon their posts was deeply flawed, underestimating the profound, unbreakable bond Caesar had forged with these creatures through years of trust and understanding. As the shocking news of his death spread like a violent storm sweeping across the land, and cries of horror and disbelief rolled through the crowded, narrow streets lined with shocked onlookers, the reaction of his dinosaurs was immediate, visceral, and utterly unpredictable. The flying guardians stationed outside the Senate unleashed a deafening, piercing roar that reverberated throughout Rome, a chilling warning of disaster that sent shivers down every spine, their powerful wings beating the air into swirling whirlwinds that stirred dust and debris. This was the legendary roar of vengeance, Ultor's roar, a sound that henceforth became a haunting symbol of tragedy, its echoes bouncing off the Colosseum's towering walls and lingering in the air like a mournful dirge. Trained combat dinosaurs in their barracks on the city's rugged outskirts instantly felt the profound absence of their master, the guiding force who had shaped their lives. Some, especially those with whom Caesar had formed deep, personal bonds, stroking their rough scales with gentle hands or feeding them by hand with tender care, fell into a wild, uncontrollable rage, their roar shaking the very ground beneath their feet with a force that rattled windows. The legions of tyrannosaurs in their sturdy enclosures, surrounded by iron bars that groaned under their weight, began furiously battering the walls with their massive heads, their sharp claws leaving deep, jagged scratches that scarred the metal, striving with desperate strength to break free and seek vengeance. The forest thunders, usually obedient with their feathered tails swaying gracefully, turned aggressive toward their Roman keepers, attacking with lightning speed and feral precision, their claws flashing in the dim light. The city descended into a state of utter panic. Women with children clutched tightly to their chests fled through the chaotic streets, their cries piercing the air, while men grabbed whatever weapons they could find, from rusty swords to makeshift clubs, in a frantic attempt to defend themselves. Caesar's beloved beasts, bereft of his guiding will and masterful presence, became a sudden, overwhelming source of fear and confusion, heralding the dawn of a new, turbulent era of chaos that threatened to engulf Rome. Their primal roars mingled with the desperate screams of citizens, creating a frenzied, haunting symphony of despair that seemed to make even the stoic statues on the Forum tremble with an unseen force. Chapter 10, Legacy of the Dragons and the Twilight of an Era. Caesar's sudden, violent death plunged Rome into a new, devastating civil war, a conflict akin to a turbulent, raging sea crashing relentlessly against the rocky shores with waves that shattered the peace. His heir, Octavian, with his cold, calculating gaze that missed nothing and a strategic mind honed to perfection, faced a dual, formidable challenge. Rome's external enemies, the cunning Parthians with their archers and the resourceful Egyptians with their naval prowess, and the untamed dinosaurs, now deprived of the only one who could truly control them with an instinctive understanding and magnetic charisma that no other possessed. Many of these majestic creatures, left without the supervision and guidance that had defined their lives, reverted to their primal instincts, retreating to the wild where their deep, resonant roars echoed hauntingly through dense forests and marshy swamps, a reminder of their untamed nature. Others, driven by confusion and aggression, grew increasingly hostile, attacking unsuspecting travelers with packs on their backs and scattering herds of livestock with their thunderous charges, their scales glinting in the sunlight as they roamed free. It soon became painfully clear to all that without Caesar, whose unique, irreplaceable bond with these giants had been forged through years of patience and trust, control over these towering creatures was incomplete and fragile, their intricate training requiring his personal presence, his voice, and his touch to maintain order. Part of the once mighty dragon legion's formidable theropods with their earth-shaking strides and graceful pterodactyls with their soaring wings remained loyal to Octavian, their heavy footsteps resounding with diminished pride at carefully orchestrated parades through the city streets. But their effectiveness on the battlefield waned as new, inexperienced tamers struggled to replicate Caesar's intuitive methods with fumbling hands. Maintaining their fragile loyalty demanded constant, exhausting effort, including the distribution of special treats like fresh meat and the performance of elaborate rituals with incense and chants, and not all species, such as the elusive water dragons with their aquatic needs, could be utilized as effectively as before due to the overwhelming complexities of their upkeep and the logistical challenges they presented. Octavian, a pragmatic politician with a penchant for order, efficiency, and a vision of a stable empire, realized with a heavy heart that the mass maintenance and widespread use of dinosaurs were not only excessively dangerous, with their unpredictable natures posing constant risks, but also prohibitively resource-intensive, requiring vast quantities of grain to feed their enormous appetites, endless barrels of water to quench their thirst, and expansive pastures to sustain their grazing habits. Gradually, with a strategic mind focused on the future, he reduced their numbers within the army, favoring more predictable and manageable human troops armed with sturdy swords, polished shields, and disciplined formations that could be relied upon without question. The remaining dinosaurs were employed sparingly, reserved only for critical situations such as defending vulnerable borders against invaders or serving as awe-inspiring symbols of power during rare triumphs, or kept in special, fortified reserves with towering walls of stone and vigilant guards patrolling the perimeters, fed with leftover crops gathered from the fields. The glorious era of the Dragon Legions, when their mighty roar symbolized the unassailable might of Rome and struck fear into the hearts of enemies, drew to a quiet, inevitable close, leaving behind only a faint, nostalgic echo in the collective memory of the people. Dinosaurs did not vanish entirely from the face of the world, their legacy enduring in subtle ways. They persisted in the wild, untamed forests dense with ancient trees and murky swamps teeming with life, their elusive tracks discovered by intrepid hunters with keen eyes, while some species, like the agile Gallic skimmers with their elegant wings, were still carefully maintained in Rome's well-guarded reserves, where young, eager scholars with parchment rolls under their arms and ink-stained fingers studied them with meticulous notes and detailed sketches. But their former grandeur, their pivotal role in shaping the empire's destiny, and their awe-inspiring presence on the battlefield faded into the mists of time, giving way to rich, evocative legends that captured the imagination. Caesar's enduring legacy, however, remained untouched and unblemished by the passage of years. He not only redrew the world's map with his conquests of Gaul and Egypt, expanding Rome's borders with bold campaigns, but also proved with visionary insight that man could find a profound, harmonious common ground with the planet's mightiest, most formidable creatures, creating a unique symbiosis that altered the very course of history with its innovative impact. Though subsequent emperors, such as the shrewd Augustus with his focus on peace and the stern Tiberius with his military discipline, preferred not to engage with these giants as closely or as passionately as Caesar had with his hands-on approach, the legends of his extraordinary dragon legions were lovingly passed down through countless generations, whispering of a golden time when the Roman Empire rose not only on the disciplined strength of its legions but also on the powerful wings, resonant roars, and unyielding might of ancient monsters that once walked beside men. A world where dinosaurs lived alongside humanity in a delicate balance left an indelible, everlasting mark on the fabric of civilization. And amid the weathered ruins of this unique, transformative era, among the scattered fragments of the Colosseum with its broken arches and piles of marble debris strewn across the ground, Rome continued its resilient path forward, no longer shadowed by the majestic flying giants that once dominated its skies, but carrying with it a cherished memory of greatness that would never fade into oblivion.